Commissioners, could you just for the record make sure that I know that everybody's on before we get started with the meeting? Commissioner Olson?
I'm here.
Commissioner Boyle?
Here.
Commissioner Jewell? Commissioner Jewell?
Okay. Are we all set to start? All right. Welcome, everyone, to the St. Louis County Supreme Board meeting for August 11th, 2020. It's good to see all the smiling faces. And we'll get started right after we do a moment of silence, customary again for the board to do a moment of silence for victims of violence, foreign and domestic. After that, we'll go right into the Pledge of Allegiance. We ask everyone to stand. We appreciate that, and we'll take that moment of silence right now.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Do a roll call for us.
Commissioner Jewell? Commissioner Jewell? Commissioner Boyle?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner McDonald? Here. Commissioner Musa?
Here.
Commissioner Nelson?
Here.
And Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, citizens will be allowed to address the board on items not on the agenda. Speakers will be limited to 5 minutes each. We have one. We have Ray Higgins. Good morning, Ray. How are you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, I'm Ray Higgins from the Minnesota Timber Producers Association. Don't want to take up a ton of your time. I spoke before you about 3 weeks ago about issues in the forest products industry with loggers related to COVID and financial problems that we've been suffering in our industry since then. I see that on your agenda today you've got a proposal that is very helpful. I just rise in support of it. And in talking to commissioners and others, it sounds like there's support on the board as well, and we appreciate that support. I know the staff, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Weber, and others have worked hard on the proposal, and just wanted to rise in support of that and let you know that if there are questions when the time comes, I'm here to help you out. So thank you for your responsiveness in helping out the logging industry in Minnesota.
Thanks, Ray. For items listed on the board agenda or committee as a whole agenda, citizens will be allowed to address them at the time a motion is on the floor. We have the consent agenda up next.
So moved.
Moved by Nelson.
Support.
Second by McDonald. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to the regular agenda under Health and Human Services.
A good reminder from
We're still.
Yep.
Thanks, Frank. I appreciate it. You missed, you just joined in, I take it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, glad you're here. I apologize. I forgot we were going back to roll calls. Sorry. Phil, it's your time to shine.
Commissioner Jewell?
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Musa?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye, thank you. Okay, under Health and Human Services, we have to authorize a 1.0 social work position, and it's the Assertive Community Treatment Program in the Public Health and Human Services Department. We'll amend the contract with Human Services Development Center. It's letter 20-273 to move without recommendation.
I'll move it.
Okay, moved by Nelson. Is there a second?
Support.
Support by Commissioner Olson.
Aye. Olson.
Okay, thank you. Would you be so kind as to frame?
Thank you, Chair Jugovich. The request before the board is to approve
and a realignment or an adjustment of our staffing team model relative to our Duluth Assertive Community Treatment, or ACT program, in PHHS, in Public Health and Human Services. As background, the board letter goes into some depth regarding the ACT program, both in Duluth and Virginia, as well as our transition assertive community team, which is called TACT. So we have ACT and TACT. The request before the board is to align a St. Louis County social worker position in lieu of a community provider position, recognizing marketplace concerns and our ability to better address the goals of these programs. It is an increase in complement of one. I would remind the board that we are holding a number of vacancies and or positions for future determination as to whether and how we fill them. But more significantly, this is budget and levy neutral. I believe the question was raised on all three of those fronts by Commissioner Nelson at the Committee of the Whole, and I also am informed that he had the opportunity to speak directly with Director Mersch in this. So I hope that any concerns have been resolved. I believe the Commissioner Boyle, as Chair of Public Health and Human Services, is understanding and in full agreement with the proposal by Director Mersch.
Okay. Thank you. Any discussion? Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Commissioner Yugovich. Look, the concerns are brought forward, and I understand that there's a need to do this and to fill this position. I understand the importance of this. Folks, everybody needs to understand this is not the tough year. Next year is the tough year. And the year after that might be the same. And we all need to be looking at this budget, and every time we add something or every time we put something on levy, that we have a clear understanding. I am happy to see that we have a bunch of open positions. I'm hopeful that we're going to find a way of not filling some of those positions. I know we've challenged every department head to do the same. And the rundown of increases in each department that I've asked for, I know that's going to be forthcoming. It's not included here. But the only reason this is revenue neutral is because we've got 9 months of savings, because we haven't had that position full. That's what makes it revenue neutral. So I think, and I've asked both administration and Director Mersch and others these board letters are also not just to inform us, but they're to inform the lay people out there, our citizenry. And I want to see it more clearly spelled out in the future so that everyone can understand it. I looked at it and knew what was happening, but I'm sorry, the average person doesn't see that. And that doesn't make me above average, Commissioner McDonald. It does not, okay? But it's just that when you see it every day, you understand it. And I want to make sure that our board letters are understandable to individuals that aren't necessarily looking at it on an everyday basis. Thank you, Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Any other questions or comments? Anyone on telephone have any comments or questions? Okay. Would you do a roll call for us, Phil?
Commissioner Jewell,
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Musa,
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson,
Aye.
and Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye. Thank you. Next up, under Central Management and Intergovernmental, we have the Clare Treble Settlement Agreement Letter 20-280.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Nelson. Is there a second? Support. Second by Commissioner McDonald.
Thank you, Chair Jugovich and Commissioners. The action before the board is a request to approve a proposed settlement of claims asserted by
Claire Treble against St. Louis County. The proposed settlement is subject to the approval of this board. I will note that under this settlement, which involves a vehicle accident between a St. Louis County vehicle and a private citizen vehicle, under this proposed settlement, Ms. Treble will release her claims against St. Louis County and conference with the Attorney's Office, Attorney Rubin, and Assistant County Attorney Campanerio. The recommendation is that we accept the proposed settlement to avoid the risk and expense of any future litigation. Again, the settlement amount is an amount of $35,000.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the board? Anyone on the phone have any comments or questions? Okay, Phil, would you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jewell,
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald. Commissioner Musa. Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
Chair, Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye, thank you. So the board will recess to convene, consider items passed at the committee of the whole meeting. So, we just need to adjourn?
We need to
Recess.
recess, or
Recess.
essentially,
Recess.
we will reconvene.
Because, yeah, okay. We'll just recess right now, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, for the record, you're recessing and you intend to come back together
back.
after the committee of the whole.
Yes. Okay, so, we'll, you need a 5? Or we go right into it? Okay, let's keep going. Okay, you ready? Phil, could you do a roll call for us?
Commissioner Jewell,
Here.
Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Olson,
Here.
Commissioner McDonald. Commissioner Musa.
Here.
Commissioner Nelson,
Here in beautiful downtown Hibbing.
and Chair, Commissioner Yugovich.
Here. All right, thank you. Consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Nelson. Is there a second?
Support.
Support by Commissioner Musso. Discussion. Phil, could you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jewell,
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald.
Aye.
Commissioner Musa.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
Chair, Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye. All right, thank you. Move on to the, oh, I'm sorry.
Chair Juvich, before we get into the balance of the regular agenda portion of the Committee of the Whole, I just wanted to acknowledge to commissioners present and on the phone that there are several changes that have been in process since Thursday. For the public who's listening, we will be meeting next on September 1st, so we are covering a lot of county business today, and we'll be reconvening the county board to bring to closure a number of resolutions and items that have been brought forward. So in our vernacular, board, committee, and back to board. I would note that the first item that we, one of the items we're going to take up will be item number 20-301, which is a really good news story around the acceptance or application acceptance of a housing assistance program grant. I would note that we have a replacement agenda and updated information relative to the Federal CARES Act monies, which is noted as board letter number 20-297. So it's stamped with an R, so you know that you're referring to the proper one. We also have two late additions to the agenda for the board's consideration today. That includes item number 20-302, 302 under Finance and Budget, which is another grant application, authorizing application acceptance of funds from the Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation to afford economic development. And also, we have a request, and I will be passing this out at the time, to add, include an item for Central Management Intergovernmental Committee on the rescheduling of the location for September 1st, 2020 board meeting brought forward at the request of Commissioner Jewell. And we'll pass that out, and I believe email versions have been sent to the commissioners who are not here right now, but are engaging via phone. So I'm going to pass that out now, and I just wanted the board to be aware that we've got, keep track of your items, because we've got a lot to cover, and those are the items that are new since Thursday's mailing of the packet information. Thank you, Chair Jugovich. So the only board letter that is not on the agenda as we went into the meeting, and this is input we received this morning, is an item for Central Management and Intergovernmental Committee. So that would be, I would propose that would be the last committee meeting, the last item we take up on Committee of the Whole today.
Okay. With the additions, did we get a motion in a second?
No impact to our consent agenda, Mr. Chair, so we're okay there.
Just, okay. Okay. So we just want to add these to the regular.
Yes. Commissioners, Chair Jugovich, the new items, 3 of the 4 items I mentioned are identified with an asterisk on your agenda. 1 under Health and Human Services Committee, 2 under Finance and Budget Committee, and then the resolution that I just passed out, which was requested by Commissioner Jewell, would go under Central Management Intergovernmental, which would be an addition to the end of the
Where are you seeing the asterisk? I don't see the asterisk.
committee.
Down under finance, right here. These 3 are new.
Yeah, I don't have that. There's no asterisk.
Okay, it's okay. Here, I'll show you which ones they are. This one?
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking, I didn't have any asterisks. Okay. All right. Okay, we're good. I feel slighted.
So, you need an updated agenda?
An updated one. He does not have the updated one.
All right, that was the confusion. I apologize. I did not have an updated version. You're too kind, Kevin Gray. Go get that contract out of the garbage.
Chair Jugovich, just Deputy Administrator Fritzinger pointed out to me that typically we would go over our public hearings as the first point of business before we went into the committee hearings. Since all 3 of these hearings are slated for September 1st, he pointed out that it might be good to have the discussion on the Central Management Committee item first, because a change in location would impact the location identified in each of these public hearings. Is that correct, Clerk Chapman and Deputy Administrator Fritzinger? So with the board's indulgence, you want to take a minute or so to review the Central Management Intergovernmental Committee item, I would suggest and concur with Brian that we address this first and then make a note for each of the public hearings if the board were to choose to reschedule the location of the September 1st meeting, because that would impact our public hearing location notice.
Sure, let's do that.
So thank you for your indulgence on that.
Commissioner Nelson?
Mr. Chair, we're going board committee board. If there were any adjustments to be made, if indeed there are going to be adjustments made, which I don't think there should be, to the location, because we're issuing $30 million in bonds. And we're not going to let the public in? It's just, there's something just fundamentally wrong with that. So I don't see any reason why we can't just go with the agenda the way it is. And if we make the change, we'll make the change at the end on everything. It's up to you, Mr. Chair.
Let's have the conversation, definitely. I'd like to do that. Let's talk about this, and we'll hear this first. I do want to do this because I think we should have a conversation about it. There's some talk that needs to be had over it. Okay.
As soon as the motion's on the floor, then.
Okay, so we'll start off with the board letter 20-303.
Thank you, Chair Jukovich. This, I added to the agenda this morning. I apologize, but I have not been thinking about it. But given the increase in the number of cases in the Duluth area and the need, as Commissioner Nelson has pointed out, for a good number of people to be able to attend, it seems appropriate to do it at a space where we have really good internet and access. So this resolution is a resolution to reschedule the September 1st, 2020 board meeting to the Government Services Building in the St. Louis River Room.
Mr. Chair?
And I would move it. Is there a second?
Hang on, Frank, the attorney wants to weigh in.
Just a quick point of order. Actually, this is the Health and Human Services Committee. Commissioner Boyle is the chair. So he actually should be convening this committee right now on this item. Or, excuse me.
No,
Okay, oh, you're right. Go ahead, okay.
yeah, it's central management.
Okay, but we need to make sure Commissioner Jewell moves and,
Yep, Commissioner Jewell did move, I believe.
Yep.
Okay, was there a second?
I'll support.
Okay, support by Musaf.
Supported by Commissioner Musa. Is there any discussion?
Commissioner Jewell, we have Commissioner Nelson raising his hand.
Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Commissioner Jewell. Again, public hearing. And I know there are a number of members of the public who would like to give testimony. I appreciate the fact that there are individuals can give testimony on the computer, but the fact of the matter is that this is something that we do maybe once every 5 years or more. And you're going to have comments on this. And if we're going to do the people's work, we need to be in front of the people. There's no way I can support moving this to a building where we absolutely will lock the public out. That's what we will do. And I'm sorry, maybe in Duluth they have internet access where they can be on and be ready to go. That is not the case throughout St. Louis County. And on the phone lines is not as good as being there or being present where you can be seen. It just is not. We had a planning commission meeting a few weeks ago where we lost everything. And yet we still held the meeting and moved on. The applicant didn't even get an opportunity to testify all the way through. So technology is great. But folks, I don't feel comfortable holding these public hearings, especially on the bonding ends of things, unless we're out there and available to the public. So I will not be supporting this. There is no reason. We have been following everything that my fellow commissioners asked for. Masks, social distancing. We were assured by one of my fellow commissioners that he would be there if we did those things. And yet, I read in the paper that my fellow commissioner is not going to come because we're not doing enough. So then the question is, how much is going to be enough? Could you please write me a list so that we can at least have the list and know what it is, instead of having this invisible list out there that keeps getting added to every time we make the changes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair Commissioner. Any other comments?
Commissioner Musoff has his hand up, Chair Jewell.
Mr. Musa.
Thank you, Chair Jewell. You know, as stated, I am in the middle of, we'll say, the Duluth and the Iron Range and trying to build balance, supporting the range folks today at a meeting in Hibbing, and supported you in this movement as well, Commissioner Jewell, to move to the GCS. Now, I am just reaching out asking for clarification. I believe after discussion last week, we talked about moving forward if it was GCS or at the courthouse in Duluth. Was the public still allowed in the GCS? I thought that was brought up last week, that they would be monitored in and out. Just looking for clarification on that.
That is my understanding as well, Mr. Musa, but I would look to administration.
Commissioner Musoff, Commissioners, in the GSC, we, as indicated at the last meeting, we would have the ability to provide access to the public. It will be a bit of an exercise with the room that we have to shepherd people in and out. We will also be able to set up the Miller Creek room more than likely so the public can also observe the meeting taking place on the WebEx from that space as well. So it would be limited access. But we would be able to get the public in to be able to testify as part of those public hearings.
Thank you. Commissioner
Are
Jewell?
there any other comments from board members?
Commissioner Jewell, Chair Jewell, Commissioner McDonald has raised his hand.
So, thank you, Chair Jewell. I just, when looking at this, I just want to be sure that if somebody wants to come due to lack of internet access in greater Minnesota, that they will be able to attend and give testimony in person. And I think that has been brought up, but I just want to make sure for the people who are out there that have a vested interest in anything dealing with the public hearings or on the board agenda or want to speak to the board, and they don't have the internet access, that we can tell them that they can appear in front of the board.
Yes, I think the understanding that we talked about last week is that we will have multiple avenues for people to participate, for people who are challenged by physical disabilities or illness. They will be able to join via WebEx. If they wish to attend in person, we will arrange for that.
Chair Jewell?
Yes.
No, this is Mike. Just a couple of thoughts. I completely understand you wanting to get into an area where we can use the WebEx and our technology. Again, but I have to reiterate what Commissioner Nelson said. Sometimes the phone is all these people have if they can't make it to be there in person, which becomes a big deal because sometimes the phone reception isn't great. But we've had conversations in the past, and I know some of the commissioners feel very strongly that the phone just isn't enough, and we have to open up all these avenues, which I don't disagree with, but at the same time, we all have to understand we don't all live in areas where internet access allows us to do that. So having the ability to come and show up and speak your piece in person does make a difference for the rural communities. So if we are going to do this, and I don't disagree again, but if we're going to do this, we just want to make sure that we understand that there's people that do not have that internet capability all the time and need to show up in person, possibly because where they live is detrimental to making communication through technology.
Yep, again, as we discussed last week, this does not stop that from happening.
Okay, so my understanding is that we have the technology there, we will have the resources through staff or whatever the case may be to make sure people can come in and see us. We will make sure we follow the rules, do our social distancing, be clean and wear masks, but at the end of the day, the public will have the opportunity to come and visit with us in person. And that's the biggest challenge I think that we have on a daily basis, is making sure people understand that if you do not have internet, you can still reach the county board.
Correct. I would also say that this does the other side of that even more effectively, in that for people who do not feel like they can come, they can participate by using internet means, and that means a lot. As I have pointed out, I was surprised to find out that in our meeting regarding refugee resettlement, we had nearly 3,000 people participating. Last week, even without video, we had 50 people participating via Facebook Live. So the fact is, we have lots of people who are interested in participating, some of whom can't attend by means of the internet, but others who can and very much wish to. So this will allow both of those things to happen.
I agree. I just wonder how we ever made it without this technology prior to this.
Well, Commissioner, it is one of the amazing things about the speed of change in the last few years is that there are all kinds of things. My grandson at 8 can fix my phone. I guarantee you I could never fix somebody's phone at 8. So even the wonky ones that you rang that were up on the wall. So, anything else? Anybody on the phone? Yes, Commissioner Olson.
Commissioner Schultz, thank you. I just wanted to add to the conversation that I think because we all have a vested interest in making sure that the public has access to our meetings and that the staff and public and commissioners and everybody is able to do that safely. Everyone has expressed an interest in that. That having the option of being able to have them in person with a phone and with internet provides 3 different options for people to be able to participate. And we are being more transparent and more accessible than we've ever been in my tenure here, and I'm imagining before that. And so I would like to, I'm not going to do anything formal with this particular resolution, but I'd like to, again, encourage the board to be able to discuss and come to some agreement about how we will run meetings in the future. I think this is unfair to our staff to have them running around to different locations trying to figure out how they can afford three ways for people to participate, so we can cover everybody, and not every space is going to work for that. And but there will be some that will, and we'll be able to figure that out. But to do it week by week is really time consuming, and I think there's a little bit of a setup for them to try to do that. And so I'm I'm just going to again encourage that we can come together and maybe pick some locations for the future, like the Virginia GSC and the Duluth GSC, and utilize those locations until some other things can be figured out and we can, get a sense of our technology and where we could be, and we can afford those three options to our public and our staff as well to keep people safe during this pandemic. So I just wanted to add that and encourage that we continue to do that. And I would really love to see, I've kind of been requesting this, that we have something that is simple and in writing that lets the public, the staff, and the commissioners know what our process is for meetings and how people will come in and out. I think everywhere else that we go, they have processes and steps and things that we all know how to follow. And I think that is one of the things at board meetings that we need. We need a process, and that should be written down, and it should be written down and accessible for everybody to see, so that if they're attending in person or some other way that they're able to know what to expect, what they need to do to come in person, and what will be expected of them when they arrive. So I think that that's just good transparency and good process. And I would, look to between now and when we're coming back, I would hope that in September that we will all be able to come to some agreement on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Anything else?
Chair Jewell, Commissioner Nelson has his hand raised.
Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Jewell. I continue to oppose this. Look, if somebody believes that we are being more open and more transparent at this point than we've been in the past, that's a fallacy. It's just not the truth. I am not supportive of being on the internet. If we talk about 50, 49 of those were St. Louis County staff that were tapped into the computer watching the meeting. What a productive use of time. I remember years ago, we used to have every department head sitting at every county board meeting. We eliminated that because they're not productive sitting at county board meetings. So we put them on a medium that has proven to be manipulated. Facebook is not something that it's not like putting it on PAC TV. I've got people here filming this for PAC TV. I know they're putting this meeting on PAC TV. That is not the case with Facebook. People who are good at that can jump on there and hack into that Facebook and do whatever they want to do at this meeting. And I'm not ready to do that until there's an absolute assurance that that cannot happen. And I would bet that Jeremy would tell us he cannot assure us of that. So we can talk about being open and transparent, and we can continue to hide, but I'm going to stay out here doing the people's work. And I think our board should stay out here doing the people's work. And by the way, I'm going to be down at that front door at the GSC in Duluth, making sure that people can get in, because I'll guarantee you the doors are going to be locked. I'll guarantee they're going to be locked. We will be frustrating people. They'll come up to the door and they'll grab it and they'll say, well, I can't go in. So don't expect me there early, Mr. Chair. I will be there at 9:31. Normally I'm at meetings quite early, but I will be there at 9:31 because I'm going to make sure that anybody that wants to get into that meeting in the GSC has an opportunity to get in there. And I'm not going to place that burden on our administration and others because, quite frankly, I know some commissioners that have been pretty unfair to administration for quite some time. And my vote against this, Commissioner Jewell, gives you something more to complain to the Duluth News Tribune about. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson.
Chair Jewell?
Anything else?
Yeah, I have a couple, just another comment. As far as what we've seen, we've had conversations over the last number of months. Definitely, we've seen media posts, we've seen different things, whether it be on print or on television, radio, what have you. But at the end of the day, I want to reiterate that our staff has been outstanding in making sure, and it's not just administration, it's maintenance, it's everybody that goes along with it. For these meetings to take place, we have sanitizers, we are wearing masks, we are separated, the building has been cleaned, we are social distancing, we are doing all these things. I never want to give the public the impression, and I think sometimes they get the impression, that maybe we are opening the door for them to come and get sick. But we are following the standards. We are doing what we need to do, and we are doing it correctly to ensure the safety of people that come in. So I will go along with this, but I just want everyone to understand that our staff, top to bottom, has been working diligently to make sure these meetings are safe and we can still be effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Jukovich. I have to say that the thing that I have said numerous times over the last several months is that our staff almost universally have done amazing work in challenging times. And whether that's keeping people safe who enter our buildings, or getting our road work done, or being on the front lines in human services, or in the attorney's office or the sheriff's department, all of these people are doing really amazing work, and I too, like you, appreciate what they are doing. So, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, can you call the roll?
Commissioner Jewell? Commissioner Jewell? Commissioner Boyle?
Through?
Yeah, you came through there. Try one more time, please.
Aye.
Gotcha.
Commissioner Boyle?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Musa?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson?
Nay.
And Chair Commissioner Yurkovich.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Let's see, how are we doing this moving forward? Back to the top?
Back to the top for the public hearings portion.
Okay, now we've got, can we take a personal privilege?
No.
Okay, we're going to do a personal privilege, and we'll be back in a few minutes, 5 minutes.
All the public hearings have to be amended.
4 of them, so they're going to have to be amended.
I'm just not going to point the students.
320 West 2nd Street.
Okay, are we all set again? Ready? Okay, everybody on the phone, all set?
Yes, Chair.
Patrick and Frank, you there?
Yep.
Okay,
Can you hear me now?
I can, yes, you're doing a phone commercial, Frank. I can hear you now. Okay, we'll move on to the establishment of public hearings under finance and budget. Chair Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Commissioner Yurkovich. We have a motion to establish a public hearing on an amendment to the Transportation Sales and Use Tax Transportation Improvement Plan for Tuesday, September 1st, 2020 at 9:45. I would move it. Is there support?
I'll support.
Moved and supported. No discussion typically on this.
Chair Nelson, I move to amend it to make sure it's at the Government Service Center, River Road. I make that motion.
Okay, is there support for that motion? Is there support?
Support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported to change the location to the St. Louis River Room. That is a amendment. Discussion on the amendment? I won't repeat myself, but everybody here knows how I feel. Clerk Chapman, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Jewell,
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle,
Aye.
This is to the amendment.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Commissioner Musaf,
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson,
Nay.
and Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye.
Okay, so we have an amended item back on the board. Again, discussion on amending the transportation sales and use tax improvement plan. Administrator Gray.
Chair Nelson, I just want to make the board aware that each of you should have a copy of a PowerPoint that gives a little bit of background regarding the transportation sales tax revenue bonds. This is information we can go over in more depth on September 1st as part of the public hearing. But if you wanted a brief overview of what the public hearing will be addressing, we could walk the board through that. It's probably a 3-minute quick overview, if that would help anybody at this time, or we can do it on September 1st in more depth.
Any commissioners care to hear more on the plan that's laid out in front of us, or do you want to wait till we actually get to the public hearing? I think waiting for the public hearing is fine.
Okay.
Remind this board that the sales tax has been a tremendous benefit to this county transportation system, and at least a couple of commissioners on this board had the courage to vote for it. The rest of you that have come later have been very supportive. I appreciate it. With that, in the establishing the public hearing, Clerk Chapman, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Jewell,
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Commissioner Musaf,
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson,
Aye.
and Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye.
Very good. We have another public hearing to establish. It's establishing a public hearing to amend the capital improvement plan and on the intent to issue capital improvement bonds to incorporate the amended transportation improvement plan. I would move it. Is there support?
I'll support.
Supported by Commissioner Yugovich. Again, this is just establishing a public hearing. Anybody care to?
Sure. I make amendment, again, to change the government service center river room.
Is there support for that amendment? Moved and supported. Discussion? Pardon? I'm sorry, I did not hear that.
I'm sorry, I just said support again because I thought you didn't hear me the first time.
Very good. No, I had your support, Commissioner Olson. Moved by Commissioner Boyle, supported by Commissioner Olson, to move the public hearing to the Government Service Center, St. Louis River Room. Again, discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, Clerk Chapman, would you please take the roll on the amendment?
Commissioner Jewell, Commissioner Jewell,
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Commissioner Musaf,
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson,
Nay.
and Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye.
Okay, we are back at the original motion as amended. Discussion. Seeing none, Clerk Chapman, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Jewell, Commissioner Boyle,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Commissioner Musaf,
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson,
Aye.
and Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye.
We have one other item to establish a public hearing for. It's to establish a public hearing to consider an off-sale intoxicating liquor license in the unorganized township of 6819, recently heard by the Liquor Committee, and I would move it. Is there support?
Support.
Moved and supported. Discussion to that. Anything further on this?
Mr. Chair, again, amendment to government service center river room.
Been moved to amend the location to the Government Service Center, St. Louis River Room. Is there support?
Support.
Moved and supported. Discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, Clerk Chapman, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Jewell? Commissioner Boyle?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald? Commissioner Musa?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson?
Nay.
And Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye.
We have the establishment of this public hearing in front of us as amended. Discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Chapman, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Jewell?
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Musa?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
And Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, that's all I have under committee, or under establishing public hearings under the Finance and Budget Committee.
Thank you. We'll move on to Environment and Natural Resource Committee. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. One public hearing to establish here for a Class B land exchange, Tuesday, September 8th, 9:40 a.m. Be letter number 20-294. I would move this with an amended location to the Government Service Center, Duluth. Do I have support?
Support Boyle.
Support.
Got a lot of support.
Thank you for the support. Any discussion on this public hearing? Administrator Gray?
Just a clarification, Chair Musoff. This meeting date has been moved to September 1st to September 8th. Is that correct, Deputy Administrator Fritzinger?
This was basically establishing for the 8th under the resolution that the board has before.
And is the location then proper to move it to the GSC? Can we look into that for just a quick minute to make sure we've got the right location change, or right location notice?
The location on the notice here matches up with our current schedule currently is, which is the Duluth Courthouse for the 8th.
Okay.
I apologize for jumping the date.
Well, Chair Musoff, the same discussion will prevail at some point in time. But right now, it is properly noted in the resolution, and our board hearings are scheduled for the Duluth Courthouse at this time.
Mr. Chair, point of order. The resolution says September 1st. I'm looking right at it. And that was the date we established, I believe, at the Liquor Committee. Bill?
Commissioner Nelson, I believe they are looking at 20-294. Board letter. We already voted on 20-293.
I'm sorry. I digress. I apologize. I apologize, Chair Commissioner Musa.
Fair enough. I will amend this to rescind my motion and amend it to the original date as printed for the letter number of September 8th, if I have support to that.
Support.
Supported. Okay, back to discussion. Anything further, administration? Any other discussion? No. Clerk Chapman, will you please take the roll?
Commissioner Jewell?
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Musa?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
And Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye.
Thank you, Chair. Back to you.
Mr. Chair, would it be okay to ask for a clarification?
Sure.
To administration or to our parliamentarian? We just established this public hearing for the 8th in the boardroom, correct?
Yes.
So a Class B land exchange we have to do in the boardroom, and $30 million in bonds we do behind closed doors. I'm confused, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry. I'm just confused. I don't understand what we're doing. I'll leave it at that.
Yukovich,
Yes.
I just want to say, Commissioner Nelson keeps saying this, and I want to clarify. We're doing nothing behind closed doors. I know that he is not getting to do it the way he wants to do it, but it is actually more effectively getting to a greater number of people, and they get to listen in. So this gives multiple means of access, and people are not locked out of participating. So I just want to say that. I know he keeps repeating this, but just because he repeats it doesn't make it true.
Okay. Anything else?
Chair Jugovich,
Yes.
thank you. You know, just as a kind of a point of clarification for myself too, we probably should have brought the resolution forward to change the meetings to the GSC for the 1st and the 8th, and to establish the public hearings there as well. And so we're probably going to be bringing forward something that will make a change to that. And so it's like a chance to work with administration on it, but this vote just needed to be taken now to get the public hearing on the rolls. But it's not, to Commissioner Nelson's point, I agree that those two should not be different, that they should be the same, that we should be doing them in the GSC where we have the option for all forms of participation. So maybe we can take care of that this meeting, or maybe we can do that at the September 1st meeting.
I believe we'll have to take it up in September.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right. For the regular agenda, under Health and Human Services Committee, Chair Boyle.
Thank you, Chair Jugovich. I have one item, application acceptance of COVID-19 Housing Assistance Program grant, authorizing the acceptance of CHAP grant award to the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, COVID-19 Housing Assistance Program. I will move it. Support.
Support.
Worked by Commissioner Jewell. I'll turn it over to Administrator Gray, knowing that Director Mersch and I think Laura are both present too, to go into a little more detail on this great resolution. And I just want to give a shout out especially to Laura for her amazing grant writing skills and her team. It's nonstop, and over the year I've just been so impressed with what the grant writing has done for us. So I'll turn it over to Administrator Gray.
Thank you, Chair Boyle. Commissioners, the action before the board is to authorize the application and acceptance of grant funds in the amount of $3,283,200 from the MFHA, or Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, under their COVID Housing Assistance Program. This is indeed good news, as was noted. Director Mersch will walk us through, but broadly, these funds are intended to assist households that have been impacted by COVID-19 related circumstances. It was the result of a grant process of which we were just notified, and Linnea will talk a little bit more about the timing, but thank you to Linnea and her team for getting this on the agenda. And again, it's very positive news, and I think she will acknowledge some of the individuals who helped help us achieve this grant.
Thank you, Chair Boyle.
Thank you, Director Mersch.
Chair Boyle, Administrator Gray, thank you. I just want to echo my thanks to Laura and specifically Stacy Radosevich, who runs our FHPAP, which is the normal Family Homelessness Prevention Assistance Fund that moves through on an annual basis. And like has been stated here, money is flowing quickly through a lot of different pots of money, and so kudos to Laura, Gina, and their team for really making the most of the opportunities. You'll see here that this really mirrors what we're going to be talking about with the Federal CARES Act. This is being funded by CARES funding going to the state and specifically going to housing. And so We were well positioned because of a robust planning and partnership that we already have with all of our community organizations that are typically part of our FHPAP, and because of a robust coordinated entry process where people call in, are screened, and there's coordinated wait lists that are managed both north and south for the limited housing that we have access to. And so that process is really ready to go, and it will be the vehicle for these additional funds. As you see in here, we were awarded $3.3 million. And again, that has to be spent by December 30th of this year. So we will be moving quickly through contracts with our existing partners to do this through our coordinated entry system. And the funding from Minnesota Housing is something where if we have greater need and we're able to get the money out, there will be an opportunity to get more allocated. And so we will bring this back to the board for budget adjustments as necessary.
Comment? Questions? I'm not hearing anyone, so again, thank you, Linnea, and your team for all they are doing for this tough time. It's just another avenue to help our constituents that may not be able to make that mortgage payment or the rent. So thank you again. If there are any no other comments or questions, we'll Clerk Chapman for a vote.
Commissioner Jewell,
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Commissioner Musa,
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson,
Aye.
and Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Under Public Works and Transportation, we have Chair McDonald.
Thank you, Chair Jugovich. First up, we have Board Letter 20-295, the award of bids for a trail construction project from the Highway 169 underpass to County State Aid Highway 88. I would move that. Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Nelson. We're getting closer and closer to Ely. We're almost in sight of the water tower now, and we're working on that final project with that. And I would turn it over. I know Director Faldesi is here. Administrator Gray, if we want to.
Well,
administration.
Chair McDonald, I'll just briefly frame the issue, and Jim can talk a little bit more, Director Policy can talk a bit more to this. Again, working with the Regional Rail Authority on this. The board action that's being requested is to award to the apparent low bidder, Mesabi Bituminous, in the amount of $767,000, a project for an trail construction between the Highway 169 underpass and our County State Aid Highway, CSA 88. Again, I'll let Director Falsey talk a little bit more about this, but your comments are right on. We keep making progress on this trail, which is a tremendous undertaking and vision on the part of this board many years ago.
Thank you, Administrator Gray. Director Policy.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner McDonald, and Commissioners. You will note that Mesabi Bituminous is the low bidder, and they came in about 13% underneath the engineer's estimate. We had 3 bidders for this project, and the lowest 2 were quite close together. So we're happy with these bids. This is a federal project in partnership with the Regional Rail Authority. About $375,000 in federal funds are being applied towards this project, and about $400,000 roughly from the Regional Rail Authority as well. This is a typical partnership where St. Louis County has to sponsor the project because it is a federal project. Done many projects like this with the Regional Rail Authority to do different segments of the Mesabi Trail. This is, we are getting to the end. Maybe 2 or 3 more projects to get to completion, so it's getting close. So we're really happy to be making this additional piece of progress on the trail.
Thank you, Director Policy. Comments? Questions from commissioners? Commissioner Nelson.
Comments. Thank you, Chair Commissioner McDonald. Look, it does continue to get closer, Chair Commissioner McDonald. But sadly, our LCCMR money this year and bonding money this year never came through the state legislature. So this is a project that's going forward, but we've got a couple more of those key pieces that are not moving forward this year because of the lack of movement at the state legislative level. So a disappointment, but this passion, as I noted, was a passion of one of my predecessors, Commissioner Prebich, and Commissioner Forsman and Commissioner Rocker at that time. And it's going to be a jewel, and I'm so happy with the commitment of all of my fellow commissioners here, and especially those that serve on the rail authority, just to keep this ball rolling, because it seems some days we're pushing it up a hill, but we'll get there. And 135 miles from the Mississippi to the boundary waters, it will happen. Thank you, Chair Commissioner McConnell.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Any further comments?
Chair McDonald.
Yes, Commissioner Joel.
So just to add my voice to this, and what an amazing thing it is through some of the most beautiful area in Minnesota, going from the Mississippi all the way to Ely, through lake country in ways that I don't think people would otherwise see it. It really is a remarkable endeavor. And I want to point out that it is one of those things that without the commitment of Commissioner Nelson, who has really championed this for years after he took over for Commissioner Prebich, really is something that we can crow about in St. Louis County, along obviously with Lancaster County. But it's a pretty wonderful network that connects us not only to these beautiful spaces, but also to the communities all along the way. So thanks everybody for supporting it.
Thank you, Commissioner Jewell. Any further comments? Hearing none, I'd ask Clerk Chapman for the roll, please.
Commissioner Jewell,
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Commissioner Musa,
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson,
Aye.
and Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye.
All right, next up with Public Works, we have a board letter 20-296, state contract purchase of tandem axle diesel trucks. We're looking at 10 2020 Mack Granite tandem diesel trucks, and I would turn it over to administration to Craig, please.
Well, thank you, Chair McDonald. And again, I appreciate that we're able to get this resolution to the board. Thanks to Brian and Chad and Director Falvey's hard work. The action before the board is indeed to approve the purchase of 10 tandem axle trucks through Twin Cities Mack and Volvo of Roseville. And we've had this discussion in the past, but I just think it would be good to hear from Director Falvey. These are true workhorses of our fleet.
And I would move this. Is there support? Supported by Commissioner Nelson. We'll turn it over to Director Falvey.
Thank you, Chair Commissioner McDonald and Commissioners. Again, this year, we are requesting that we invoice our trucks, or basically put them in the queue for purchase. This is actually for a 2021 purchase with 2021 funds. But we're asking for approval at this point in time, so that essentially the lead time with these trucks is about 9 months to a year. So if we're ordering these chassis now, we won't receive them until probably March, April of 2021. That's when we'll be invoicing these and paying for them at that point in time with 2021 funds. and then they go to the outfitter. And then once they're outfitted, we'll receive them hopefully around August, September timeframe of 2021. So this is the same thing that we did last year for the 2020 purchases. So we're here again asking for that dispensation again to purchase with 2021 funds now, but approved now.
Thank you, Director Paul-Desi. Commissioner comments and questions? Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner McDonald. You know, I'm going to continue to note this every time, folks, and quite frankly, we've been doing it for 20 years. But I'm not going to quit doing it because, you know, we could buy 2/3 of another truck if we weren't paying the state of Minnesota $82,813 in sales taxes. And folks, it's just a shell game. That's all it is. It's a tax on a tax. And someday, someone down there is actually going to hear the cries of counties throughout the state and other entities that these are essential vehicles. If the road isn't plowed, the ambulance doesn't get there. If the road isn't plowed, the fire truck doesn't get there. But yet they don't consider these plow trucks essential. And that's why we pay sales tax on them. So I'm going to continue to gripe about it, and I'll apologize in advance. You're going to hear it from me every time, even though these are much needed trucks, and it's just a shame that we have to keep playing the game with the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Further comments?
Chair McDonald.
Yes, Commissioner Jewell.
So just a quick question. I also ask this question now regularly of Director Paul-Desi. So with these new machines, are we decreasing our fuel footprint at all, Jim? And do we monitor that? I know that Chad does an amazing job as our fleet manager, but I just want to ask it out loud.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner McDonald, and Commissioners. Commissioner Jewell, and I believe we provided this answer when it was asked prior, but essentially, when we're dealing with these types of pieces of equipment, whether you're in a plowing mode or a hauling mode, the mileage you get from these pieces of equipment is highly variable. As far as an industry standard, we believe that the brand of truck that we're buying, the Mack, is, when you compare it to other trucks like it, it is competitive as far as fuel efficiency. But the reality is these vehicles have a low miles per gallon, if that's the way you'd like to measure it, because it is really highly variable. It's work intensive. You're doing things that you wouldn't normally do with trucks, the plowing, all of the resistance that goes along with that. So you're really looking for power and performance in these vehicles to perform their job. You're also looking at the longevity of the vehicle, the type of maintenance you have to do on the vehicle, and the dependability really of these vehicles. That's key in our line of work, as Commissioner Nelson mentioned, that these are really trucks that are used many times for emergency purposes. We call them snow emergencies in a lot of cases, and so the trucks have to work when they have to work. So miles per gallon is important, but it's just one of the factors that we look at as we're choosing the brand of truck and what we're doing with it.
Sure, McDonald, if I could follow up.
Yes, go ahead.
I understand that, and I think there's no doubt that we buy the appropriate equipment. I think the bigger question might be, where do we find the savings, and are we making those savings in other places when we have items or vehicles that have larger fuel usage? And so for me, the question is, how is that whole footprint for our fleet doing, and are we being part of the solution for what's happening in the universe?
Thank you, Commissioner Jewell. Commissioner Dugovich.
Thank you, Chair McDonald. Commissioner Jewell, just to make sure that we're kind of on the same page, although we're not probably going to get the great mileage out of them, these trucks are definitely more eco-friendly with the thing. So we may not be gaining in savings and mileage, but we are all gaining because they are definitely more environmental friendly. Something to think about there. I know that wasn't the question, but where we did not gain from mileage, we will gain from the environmental friendly aspect. And when I heard Director Faldesi talk about power, longevity, I thought you were talking about my Dodge truck.
Director Faldesi.
Chair, Commissioner McDonald, and Commissioners, and to your bigger question, Commissioner Jewell, yes, we're mindful of our entire fleet. We continually look at what we're speccing out, what we're buying, what we're having to maintain. We're always looking at efficiencies, fuel efficiency being one of them. We have been looking, for instance, at loaders. Loaders are amenable to potentially looking at electrification versus diesel-powered, just because of the nature of how they're used and where we use them. So we've been actively looking at that arena. Of course, for our smaller, lighter vehicles, we're continually looking at the options there. Obviously, as we purchase newer vehicles, just in general, newer vehicles are more fuel efficient, just the trend of the industry, both for sedans and pickup trucks. And so obviously we're making gains there as we turn over the fleet in those areas. And we have purchased a number of hybrids and looking at electric vehicles as well as part of that fleet, and evaluating and making sure that they're meeting our needs and are dependable and maintainable. All of those things factor in. But overall, I think we can say with a straight face that we are continuing to improve in the fuel efficiency areas, just as a matter of course, but we continually look at different options as the market changes.
Thank you, Director Faldesi.
Chair McDonald.
Commissioner Jewell, go ahead.
Just, final piece. I appreciate Commissioner Jukovich's comments. I'm hardly the mechanic in the crew, so I look to others, and I do trust that Jim and his staff are doing good work. And so I'm not, and I think you're right, Commissioner Jukovich, that these vehicles are better because of what they're able to do and the time they're able to do it in, the amount of work they get done. So, it's, and Jim has said this to me before, it's finding the bad penny that keeps turning up. But I bring it up because we are such a huge system and really do have the ability to have impact. And so I appreciate what Chad is doing for the department, what Jim and others are doing. And I just want to keep it in our mind that maybe we could do even better. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Jewell. Any further comments from commissioners? Hearing none, I'd ask Phil to take the roll, please.
Commissioner Jewell?
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Musa?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
And Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Back to you.
Thank you. Under Finance and Budget, we have Chair Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
And again, thank you for welcoming us to this wonderful community of yours. Under the Finance and Budget Committee for today, I do have 3 items. The first is the Federal CARES Act monies in St. Louis County. You do have a amended resolution in front of you, 297R, and I would move it. Is there support?
Support.
Moved and supported. Administrator Gray.
Well, thank you, Chair Nelson and Commissioners. We've got a lot of information to share with you. I want to thank you for your patience as we've developed a plan, and the action before the board today is to approve the establishment of that plan associated with the allocation and distribution of CARES Act monies allocated to us by the state through the Federal CARES Act. Our goal ultimately is to rapidly move these funds into eligible efforts that will support individuals, families, and businesses during this period of significant need and time. We're going to cover this with multiple parties. I do want to acknowledge up front the work of Deputy Administrator Fritzinger, as well as Director Mersch and Laura Birnbaum from her team, Matt Johnson from Brian's team, as well as our legal and financial support that we've received from Nora Sandstead and Kristen Christensen. So I'm appreciative of Auditor Nielsen's support on that, because a lot of this is driven through our system and it's complex. Deputy Administrator Fritzinger, you can chime in anytime. You've been probably the closest to this, but I will take a quick stab at walking the board through some of the broad criteria for this. I will look to Director Johnson and Director Mersch, as well as Deputy Director Meyer, I believe, is here to talk about some notable targeted outreach to our logging industry and the businesses therein. Just as some background with respect to this CARES Act monies, as the board is aware, we were allocated approximately $24.5 million through from the state through the Federal CARES Act Assistance Program. The state of Minnesota received almost $1.9 billion as part of that allocation, some of which went to the state and some of which went to specific counties, too, in the case of the state of Minnesota. I would provide as background that CARES expenditures under this program that we're administering and directing must be reasonably necessary, tied to COVID impacts, and be incurred from March 1st through, I believe, December 30th. There's some debate on the December 1st or December 30th aspect, but based on the dialogue we've been having of late, it appears that it'll be expenditures through December 30th. I would note that due to COVID means a direct response, whether it's medical, safety, public health, or related effort or effect, such as employment or business interruption due to COVID. It does not include, in the case of governmental units, lost government revenue or expenses paid by other state or federal programs or insurance aren't eligible. But there is a broad variety of eligibility, and I will note that we have one of the uses of these funds, very significant use, will be to reimburse St. Louis County government for the necessary additional expenditures and investments we've been making due to this pandemic. But you'll hear in a little bit about our other areas of focus around small business assistance, community organizations that are touching individuals and families, and of course our outreach to the logging community. Eligible expenditures include COVID-related medical and dental, protective equipment, cleaning and sanitizing supplies and efforts, including environmental efforts, quarantining, isolation and quarantining expenses, compliance with health precautions, grants to prevent eviction and prevent homelessness and address that area, small business interruption caused by required or mandated closures, consultants supporting this effort, of which we will be engaging and propose to engage Baker Tilly to help us in these efforts around a number of fronts, including eligibility, processing, and review, and employment and training programs for furloughed workers. I mean, the list goes on and on, and a lot of that is identified in your board letter. The goal today is to obtain commissioner approval of the plan that we're going to describe a little bit further so that we can begin the process of issuing and accepting applications and distributing monies as early as August 24th. I would note out of the $24.5 million, approximately $255,000 is specifically carved out for expenses incurred by cities and or towns with a population of less than 200 people, so it was not specifically allocated out that way. Otherwise, cities over that population level received funds direct. I would note, just to give you a sense of background, out of the $24.5 million, approximately $11.6 million went to cities throughout the county that met those population thresholds, and approximately $932,000 went to 48 townships that also met that threshold. So there was a significant direct allocation, approximately $12.5 million to cities and townships throughout St. Louis County, and I have some information on that if there's any questions in that regard. Brian has detailed a very, I believe, thorough plan for review and approval and finalizing the outreach plans, publicizing these opportunities, and conducting outreaches to our small business on our small business grant programs. We have a number of activities slated for next week, pending review and approval by the board today to proceed. Broadly, I will highlight the funding plan categories and then turn it over to Deputy Administrator Fritzinger, Director Mersch, and Director Johnson to talk to them as the sections come up. So broadly, we are looking at $6 million to be allocated for community and small business assistance. That consists of a couple phases that Director Johnson will talk to. Under our community assistance program and emergency assistance program, we're proposing $6 million. These are approximate numbers. You'll note the resolution gives a little room to move the numbers between categories depending upon responses and needs. We are proposing that Land and Minerals and Public Works are identifying projects and opportunities with our timber industry, specifically as a targeted industry group for $1,250,000. There's two programs there, and those will be broken out and discussed a bit further. And at this point in time, Brian and I are recommending approximately $10 million be set aside for St. Louis County COVID response reimbursements, as well as $1 million be set aside as this plays out for the board to have more flexibility in the future. So with your permission, Mr. Chair, I would propose that we talk about our small business assistance program and our community assistance programs first, and have Directors Johnson and Marcia talk to that a little bit more.
So in which order? Director Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Nelson, and Commissioners. I emailed the Duluth Commissioners the most current draft of the guidelines for the Phase 1 and Phase 2 small business grants that are proposed. I also handed out the most current guidelines to everybody in this room. So as we wade through the pros and cons of how best to get the money to the businesses that need it the most, we reviewed other programs around the country and noticed that a lot of countries just set a dollar amount base that wasn't dependent upon the number of employees. And we thought that if we could set up a sliding scale based on the size of the business, Phase 1 deals with an application process for businesses that have up to 25 full-time employees using the full-time equivalent parameters that we would be reimbursing for direct COVID-19 expenditures. So personal protection equipment, screening equipment, plexiglass, social distancing expenditures. So anything that a business had to spend directly due to COVID-19. This is different than if a business participated in the federal small business assistant grants for the employee protection program. That was to protect payroll. This is targeted to help reimburse direct expenses to the businesses. As part of Phase 1, one of the key standouts is that loss of revenue is not eligible for Phase 1. We wanted to target the actual COVID-19 expenditures. On to Phase 2, the key difference with Phase 2 is that revenue loss is eligible. The Phase 1 application process will start at 8 a.m. On August 24th. We have worked with the IT department on developing an online application. At the back of the guidelines handed out or emailed to you, on the very back of the first page of the guidelines, we have a new phone number set up that will be answered in expanded business hours, so it won't just be answered during our normal business hours. We're going to expand it a little bit. It remains to be seen exactly what that looks like. And then we have a new email account set up that we will be able to be responsive to in expanded business hours as well. If somebody sends an email to that account, we're setting it up with an auto reply that gives them direction to where additional information off our county website is located, and then we will follow up with a personalized email to everybody that reaches out that way. Phase 1 starts on August 24th. It will run for a 2-week period. We're targeting approximately $4 million for Phase 1. It's set up. Another handout is an application process that's simple and straightforward. They answer the questions. We tried to emphasize checking the boxes. If you check the right boxes, you're eligible for these funds. If there's any money left over after Phase 1 is complete, we intend on rolling it into the Phase 2 process. Phase 2 will start at 8 a.m. on September 7th and run for a 2-week period until 8 a.m. on September 21st. The intent for Phase 2 is to open it up to businesses with up to 100 full-time employees, also included full-time equivalent. So businesses, I would like to point out, that have 20 employees are still eligible to apply for Phase 2. The dollar amount is increased from the maximum of $25,000 in Phase 1 up to $50,000 for Phase 2. Phase 2 will be a little bit more subjective. We're going to package the applications by commissioner district. Staff is going to organize the information. We're going to have a review committee make the funding determinations on that. I do intend that the commissioners will be involved in that. Again, the key difference between Phase 1 and Phase 2, Phase 1 is for up to 25 full-time employees. Phase 2 is up to 100 full-time employees. Phase 1 is $1,000 per employee up to $25,000. Phase 2 is a maximum of $50,000 award. Any comments or questions?
So Commissioners, the goal then here is to acknowledge out-of-pocket costs that are direct COVID-related, give essentially all small businesses and up to 25 employees that opportunity, and then to begin a more broader grant application process that would have a separate application form and protocol. And we would engage the board in that when we get to that point. It seems like a lot of money, but as I listen to our small business owners and they approach me, and I know virtually every one of you has shared anecdotal stories of the impacts of COVID on your small businesses in your communities and amongst your constituents, this is a step to recognize that. So if there are no questions, Chair Nelson, I would...
That's fine. I was going to open it back up to commissioners just because I know everybody's had a little chance to think about it. But Matt, this is a different phone number than the one that was on the draft, correct?
This phone number should be the same as the
same as on the draft. The website is different though. Because the other one said a /planning.
Yeah, so the clarification that is the website that will be directed to is off the county webpage. The email here is for for any business owner or members of the public to send emails to that. So this is how they contact us.
Okay.
These are the two main ways to contact us is through the new
So the application will still be through that /planning?
Yes. Yep, and that is listed just a little bit higher up.
Okay. A lot of people have had a lot of questions, and I know they've been calling in to your planning department already. I've heard some of them informed that those that received that federal money, that payroll protection plan money, that PPP money, are not eligible for this, but what you just said is they are eligible.
They are absolutely eligible.
Okay. Did we make any effort to record those numbers so that those individuals could be called back and told that the rules are, these are the rules?
Chair Nelson, Commissioners, we do have a running list of people that have been contacted. I've tried to communicate very clearly that the guidelines and the application wasn't going to be improved until August 11th.
Right.
And that I would,
Okay.
Chair
I'm just
Nelson.
wondering if we can't reach back out to them. And Matt, we are going to have people in the office working on this?
Chair Nelson and Commissioners, we have 5 full-time staff that will be in the office to answer telephones, emails, and to package these applications, send it forward for approval through the auditor's office for payment. We also have 4 additional people that will be working remotely, a combination of in the office, working remotely on responding to phone calls, responding to emails.
Very good. Thank you for that. Commissioners, questions? Commissioners on the phone, any questions? Seeing no further questions for you, Matt, thank you. Linnea, did you have something to add to that at this point?
Sure. Chair Nelson, Commissioners, I think, really thankful to have the opportunity to work together with Matthew on crafting swift, systems to get money out to our community organizations really impacted by COVID as promptly as possible. I mean, the success will be to spend all this money really well and distribute it widely. And so, I think we're working on that. We'll have a shared staff team working through the questions that are coming into the phone, the email. I think it's really important that commissioners understand that our world, where does a nonprofit go? Where does a service organization? They may be incorporated as a business, as a business, not technically a nonprofit, you know, so I mean, we're going to work together through that. And so you don't see on the community organization side quite as clear cut, because we're really listening to our organizations in the community. We're listening to like a Floodwood Services and Training, like the Ely Cares team, like the needs in communities are super different, and what community organizations have had to do to most respond to those who are really disproportionately impacted by COVID vary. So it's not as clear as counting your FTE. The criteria are more based on the number of people served. And so there will be a clear funding. It will follow everything from planning in terms of a reimbursement basis, but there's also a real significant component and a desire to fund what they've done additionally in terms of service. So whether that's staffing costs or mileage, vehicles, the Ely Cares team, all the food distribution, meal distribution, they're stepping up and doing. It's also to fund that so that not only are they reimbursed in the solvent organization coming out of COVID, but they have money to continue that kind of outreach through that December 1 timeframe. And so I think you're seeing this through this. There's draft applications in here. Again, that landing page of the county website will lead people through, and just know that behind the scenes, it's not you didn't go to the right avenue, you're out. It's no, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out where you land. It's just not that clear. And so we're just going to be the best kind of customer service that we can and just really work together. On the community organization side, the other piece I would add is that our entire funding plan will be vetted by community partners. And so very early on in this, we had a COVID Community Response Fund, which is a partnership of all of the foundations in Northeast Minnesota reach out to us and want to be part of this. As we've worked through the Treasury guidance and how complex it will be to ensure that we are funding things that are eligible from a federal perspective, we need Baker Tilly, that consulting firm, to do that first vetting. But then we're going to be working with a wide representative sample of our community to really get at those highest needs. And there's been a lot of different federal funding to help support different organizations above and beyond the Payroll Protection Act, but there's been a lot of very targeted, and so we're going to have to just keep working through that. So it's not quite as clearly defined, but please know we're working together, and the experience for the public will be very, very supportive and it'll be a team effort. So Laura's on the line. Laura, do you have anything to add? Laura Birnbaum is kind of managing the Community Assistance Program for Public Health and Human Services.
Not a whole lot to add. I appreciate the explanation of our review team, knowing that there will be an orientation for them as well, and really that when we're looking at the applications that come in, we'll be taking into consideration, like Linnea, the number of individuals served to be able to anticipate the impact of the assistance, also making sure that priority settings and populations are being served. And then there will be a question on there as well, looking at what, if any, funding for the specific COVID-related emergency the organization has or hasn't already received.
Very good. Any questions by commissioners at this point of Linnea? If not, thank you very much, Director Mersch. Jason, I think that puts you up. Deputy Director Meyer, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Chair, Commissioner Nelson, Commissioners, I'm Deputy Land and Minerals Director Jason Meyer. Here to just talk a few things about the CARES Fund Act funding ideas and our logging industry. When COVID hit, we were encouraged that the logging industry was deemed an essential business, and we're hopeful that that would help us through. But as things went on and the effects of COVID were made manifest there, things got tougher for our logging community. We had one of our major mills, as you all know, and right in Duluth, Verso, close its doors, and they have a location in Wisconsin Rapids that also affects us here. So what that does, and it did, and presently we're working through, is loggers, contractors previously purchased timber stumpage, had markets for that timber, and they purchased at a price
where they could, in all honesty, make money for their business. These mill closures change that dynamic. They now hold contracts that they have nowhere to bring the wood. Due to these effects of COVID and the mill closures. The Land and Minerals Department took some steps here early on. Our first step about a month ago, the board memo circulated. We're working presently with loggers where they have species like balsam, fir, and spruce. Also birch is a key component here, but we're working with them to be flexible in some of the utilization. This allows us to get allows the loggers to utilize those species where they have markets for. So our foresters today are out actively working with loggers to keep wood moving. Step 2 of our of an action we had, the board recently passed a resolution a week or two ago authorizing the sale price of balsam fir to be reduced on any sales that were active during during the current time period. We see step 3 as a necessary step. We're currently drafting a turnback policy, which would enable loggers to return sales that, if we can't work with them on utilization and extensions and price reductions on some of those major species, they would have a opportunity to return those sales that meet certain criteria. I guess looking at it, talking to our loggers, there are sales out there that would meet these criteria. There's just, no matter how you slice it, they're in a position where they have species they will not be able to harvest under the current conditions. So some ideas we have under this board letter, and let me talk about item B under the program first, the logging community program. One idea is to provide full refund to contractors for the 50% down payment on the turnback sales that meet certain parameters. Important to note that down payment consists of 15% of the appraised value, or roughly 10% of the sold value. That money that was received over the last few years has already been apportioned out. But those sales potentially total sale value could reach into the millions of dollars as impact as we would try to resell those. We are also actively exploring different ways of doing our timber auctions. We want to keep making timber available. One logger told me the other day he's still got some markets, but he needs to reposition his sales. The sales he has now just aren't working. He's going to have to reposition. So we want to keep that flow of timber going. We're exploring things like online timber auctions. I've been calling some loggers and floating that idea out there. Some are really on board, and some are a little more hesitant, and some of it centers around that computer access and whatnot. So I know our next auction we planned for late September here. Looks like we're going to have at the Minnesota Discovery Center an in-person auction in their pavilion room where we can open the doors and provide a little better atmosphere there. But there's costs associated with these, so we are hoping to get some of the funding to help with those costs. And then things like there's going to be lost revenue incurred by both the loggers and the county for the reduced value of these species and the flexibility of leaving some of the species go unutilized. Also, the use of forest stewardship contracts. If you ask the logger what they'd want to do, they'd want to be harvesting timber, but when it comes down to it, they need to be working. The bills are coming, and are there ways we could provide some needed work on our county lands that would provide work for these loggers and funds for that. So I can touch on
If I back up, touch a little bit on the right-of-way clearing, and Jim, I don't know if you want to say anything, but we are working with the Public Works Department. The Land and Minerals are working with the Public Works Department to identify a program which would provide funds for right-of-way clearing of our county roads, using our logger base. We've been in contact and we've already exchanged lists, gave Public Works the list of active loggers out there, some logging organizations to use local loggers and area loggers to provide that work I was telling you about that would benefit the county and on road clearing projects. So in a nutshell, as a brief discussion of some of the ideas we're having and some discussions we're having. So any questions, let me know.
Commissioners, questions of Deputy Director Meyer at this point? Jason, one quick question. Of that 500,000, then your plan is to use part of that to go directly to loggers for some of the understory issues? And
we're exploring that now. With the current economic situation for our timber industry, yes, we can sell things like aspen and maple and some of those things, but well, you go from from the range down to Duluth, we have wide areas of balsam fir being killed by budworm. That 10, 15 years ago, when we had a vibrant biomass market, we could have probably sold those and got them cleaned up without any help. We have areas now we can't do that anymore. So we're looking at those areas. Are there areas where we could use some funding to actually hire loggers to reduce things like fuel load and prepare areas that would put them into production? So that's something we are looking at, yeah.
very good. I would encourage you to look at that very hard, because getting those dollars into that logging community is going to be essential if we're going to continue to have a land department. Because without loggers, we have nobody to manage timber in the field. And I'm not as interested as in using that money for reimbursement of the land department, because we're going to take some short-term hits here for long-term gains. So hopefully we can get those dollars out there the way that I believe they should be. Commissioner questions, further questions of Deputy Director? Commissioner Jewell. This is up. Jason Meyer is at the podium, okay?
Yeah. Jason, so am I right to assume that the logging community, the logging businesses, may apply for the small business support as well as this?
Yes, Chair Nelson, Commissioner Jewell, yes, the way I understand it, they would be able to apply for that small business funding as well.
I could barely hear that,
Oh,
Jason.
sorry. Commissioner Jewell, the way I understand it, yes, they would be able to be eligible to apply for that small business funding as well.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Are there additional questions of Deputy Director Meyer at this point? Administrator, I'll turn back to Administrator Gray. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Jason, for that. I just want to acknowledge, as we continue to work through these proposals, that we're still trying to get absolute clear guidance on what's eligible costs, what meets federal guidelines. As you might imagine, there are many conferences and seminars and training, and in part why we're engaging Baker Tilly to help us with this determination. And if there isn't an ineligible item, we will need to, and we expend funds or allocate funds, we'll need to backstop them with reserves or other funding. So I just want to put that out relative to this and all of our items that we're bringing forward today. And we're working our best to get that absolute guidance and clearance of eligibility or clear interpretation. But there may be some glitches, and we've been working with the auditor's office and with department heads to ensure that we have backstops if something does not turn out to be eligible, and we've already distributed funds. So, broadly, I just wanted to throw that caveat out there for the awareness of the board before we move into the St. Louis County direct COVID expense reimbursement request that Deputy Administrator Fritzinger will lead.
Very good. Thank you, Jason. Deputy Administrator Fritzinger.
To kind of piggyback, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, as to what Administrator Gray just referred to, one of the challenges with the CARES Act program itself has been kind of a state of flux throughout. Guidance changes regularly. We are working with Baker Tilly and AMC and MICA to continue to find out some of the different changes that take place related to the rules that are in interpretations that are coming out of the federal government. So an example, as you see today with Director Johnson providing some revised materials, we are continually revising and updating some of the program guidelines as we go along. Each and every day, changes are being made to these programs to try to make sure that we stay in compliance with the new guidelines that we're getting out of the federal government. And I expect that will continue to take place as we go forward. And that in itself is one of the major reasons why in creating the programs, as part of the resolution, we want to make sure that there's some flexibility with how those dollars are actually allocated in the end. While we're recommending some specific dollars here, we do qualify that by saying as we go along and we see how programs are working, the flexibility of adjusting becomes really important depending on some of the rulings that might come from Washington. So I just want to reiterate that point that Administrator Gray just made. Specific to the county itself, obviously we have and will continue to have a great deal of expense that we're incurring for and reacting to the COVID situation. In the world of health and human services and in the world of safety, those two areas are predominantly out on the front lines of working through and working with our residents, our businesses, as well as our staff, trying to make sure that we are doing the best to protect each and every one of those. And so when we look at an allocation internally, because that is one of the major areas that the federal government does allow us to capture dollars from the allocation to be used for, we want to make sure we're catching those critical areas that we do work on each and every day. I think as Administrator Gray started with his presentation, the PPE, changes to meetings, some of the discussion you were having earlier today about how we provide public meetings and access to public meetings and some of the technological needs that we run into as we're doing this, we need to make sure we're addressing. We have also to date incurred roughly about $2.5 million in costs on some of the things that we've done within the county to date. And we know that there's a lot more beyond that that are going to take place. You're going to see an item coming up on the agenda here after this related to an ionization program. That's one of those components where as we look at how to present opportunities for us to improve systems that are in place for safety, that's one that we feel very strongly is important that we do, and in turn look at the reimbursement from the CARES dollars to help us cover those sorts of things. The space that we're in its utilization with the courts, we spend a lot of time with the courts. In fact, we have another meeting with the courts coming up at 1:30 this afternoon to continue discussions about some of the challenges that they see and how we get courts back open for trials. So we know that we have some areas there that some costs are going to be. And again, elections being today, we know Phil, while was able to secure some direct funding from the state related to some of the safety issues that he had to implement, there are some matching requirements that go along with that as well. So you'll see here on that last page a variety of areas that we believe we have some internal costs that we want to try to recover. The $10 million that we've identified here is a rough number. To be quite frank, we have requests at this point, looking from the various departments within the county, that are pushing closer to $14 million. So we know one of the goals that we had in putting together this plan and presentation was, most importantly, how do we recover the critical costs that we incur, but also make sure we're getting those dollars back out to the community, to the small businesses, and those with community and individual needs that they have out there as best we can. So this number that's represented here, we know is going to create some challenge for us as we look at the costs that we incur between now and at such point that the emergency and pandemic is done. But we think it's a good number. We believe that it'll present solid reimbursement to us for what we're doing at this point in time, but it does not reach the full spectrum of what we would expect us to incur over the next few months. So I think with that, I can answer any questions specific to that area, but I think overall, we've tried to present a plan, as I mentioned, I think covers most of the areas that we have seen questions come from the commissioners, questions that have come from the public, and meet all of those guidelines that we are seeing out there from the federal government at this point in time. And we would ask your support with the resolution that's been presented and your support of the plan here with any other questions or thoughts or feedback that you might have.
Very good. Thank you, Deputy Director Fitzinger, Deputy Administrator Fitzinger. Questions at this point of Brian? Seeing none, I'll move on here. Thank you, Deputy Director Fitzinger.
Just as
Administrator Gray.
As a wrap up, and I know you want to get to the discussion portion, I did want to note that unspent funds that we receive will be returned to the state. So of course our goal is to get these funds out to our organizations, individuals, and families that can be supported by these monies. If their funds are used for what is ultimately determined to be an ineligible purpose, there would be a repayment method to the Treasury Department. That would be a post-audit review, and I'm sure there's some sort of appeal process. And I did want to acknowledge that we are finalizing the contractual arrangements with Baker Tilly literally today or tomorrow. And we see them as being a tremendous asset. So that's the same organization that we talked about earlier in our public hearings that are supporting us for our bond issuances as well. So they provide a spectrum of consulting support. But again, I wanted to acknowledge that and reinforce what Brian shared, that we've attempted to listen to the community, listen to commissioners, and fashion out a plan that we hope meets your expectations, and to start the process now of getting these monies out to the community.
Thank you, Administrator Gray. Discussion. Or questions, I guess, first, and then discussion. I guess I'll start the discussion if there's others that want to join in, but look, first of all, I want to applaud everyone who's been working on this in St. Louis County. I think this is yeoman's work that has been done. I understand there's still some things in flux, and hopefully as those get ironed out, I make sure that commissioners get updated on anything that gets changed, okay? My disappointment is this. With this governor and this, the way this has come down, we're sitting in the middle of August. We should have been doing this back in May at the latest, but we couldn't get, the money wasn't being released. And it wasn't being released because it was going to hold up the legislature, hold them hostage. And these politics have to stop. They just have to stop. And because these dollars should have been out there. I do want to applaud the efforts of our federal delegation, especially Congressman Stauber. I know from day one, that county commissioner was making darn sure that local government and counties were going to get some of this funding to work with and distribute, and that it was not going to just land at the states and then the state would dole it out. We all know that our rural area of St. Louis County, or our rural area of the state for that matter, would have been shortchanged had that happened. So when we see Pete in the future, don't forget to mention that it was one of the first questions he asked me when they were working on this is, how are we going to make sure it gets into our rural communities? And I remember that conversation exactly. I said, it has to come to local towns, cities, and townships. And it has to come to county government. That's how you're going to ensure that it gets out. So, again, applauding those efforts. It's not enough. There's going to be a second round the way it sounds, and that won't be enough. But somehow we have to pick it back up and make it work. Commissioners, anything further? Commissioner Yugovich.
Thank you. Just want to make sure that we're hitting, I spoke to a township board member last night and said that they did not receive anything. We want to make sure that the townships are, okay, just making sure everyone's covered, because they are out there and they're working hard trying to, make ends meet, and we want to do everything we can to be part of the solution for them.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioner Yugovich. 78 or 79 townships in St. Louis County. We have them that range all the way from 2,500 people down to 5. So we have a very diverse group of townships, and thank you for that comment, because we cannot forget about them. Commissioner McDonald.
Thank you, Chair Nelson. And again, just to reiterate what Commissioner Jugovich said, they are patiently waiting, and I kept telling them that once this is approved today, that the notice will go out to the townships, and they will be made well aware, as well as having commissioners available to answer any question that these townships may have and direct them to the right person for any other questions as far as staff. But again, on behalf of the people in the 4th District, I'd like to thank the staff and administration for the work they've done this far and will continue to do, because these are big steps, and I really appreciate what everybody has done to get us to this point, and we'll continue down the road here in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonald. Any further comments from commissioners or discussion from commissioners? Commissioner Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this is, like you said, this has been an amazing amount of work put on by this team over the last 2 months on top of their regular jobs. Still need vacation after this one. I just want to put a point out that these dollars, although, greatly appreciated, I still don't think they're going to be enough for all of our local governments, small governments, and small businesses. It will not be perfect, but we're doing the best we can, and it's my hope that we spread those dollars as thin as we can to the most small businesses and small governments that we can. But it will not be perfect, I get that, but again, thank you to the team for stepping up to the plate, coming up with this. This took a ton of time, and we're only beginning the marathon on this one. But thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle. Any further comments?
Commissioner Nelson?
Commissioner Olson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, I add my commendation of the staff and for the work they've done, but specifically in reviewing the plan and then in having a chance to have a conversation with our planning director, Johnson, about it. I was really pleased with the depth and the breadth of the program, that it really is going to impact individuals as well as impact larger and smaller businesses or mid-sized businesses, and as well as do things that help us to meet our target areas or to address concerns that we have coming forward, and public health and kind of stuff, so that we can meet our obligations to serve our most vulnerable citizens. And so I think to come up with plans that address every level is difficult, and I really appreciate that they went that deep and took that breadth to look at that. And I know with collaboration among the planning department and other departments, and our public health and human services really stepped up to the plate in terms of analyzing and figuring out how we can have the most impact with our obligations and impact those most vulnerable in our community and impact them well. And so, like a lot of people have mentioned, of course, this is a pandemic has stolen a lot from everybody, and so we have a lot to make up for. But this is a good step, and I just really appreciate how well thought out and how every single aspect was targeted in one way or another, that we're addressing it from all sides. So thanks for your work, and of course supporting it.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Seeing no or hearing no further comments, I guess we do have the resolution in front of us at this time. I would turn to Clerk Chapman to please take the roll.
Commissioner Jewell?
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Musa?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
And Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye.
We do have a couple of other items under finance and budget. The next is a building indoor air quality ionization system installation resolution purchase of for $580,900. I would move it. Is there support?
I'll support.
Been supported by Commissioner Yugovich. Administrator Gray.
Thank you, Chair Nelson. Commissioners, this is an appropriate resolution to follow on the heels of our COVID CARES Act dollars funding. The action before the board is a request to authorize an agreement with UHL ABE Company out of Duluth and Maple Grove in the amount of approximately $581,000 for the installation of global plasma solutions ionization equipment. This is in response to additional efforts that we qualitatively can make. It would be eligible for CARES Act funding. It's part of the monies that Deputy Administrator Fritzinger talked to in the previous resolution. And this will impact county facilities in Virginia, Hibbing, and Duluth, as well as Ely. The background on this I'm going to leave to Director Hall, with your permission for him to talk a little bit how we got to this point. And want to clarify that we've been taking, and Jerry and his team have been doing great efforts with our HVAC systems and our buildings for safety of physical barriers, air quality measures, some really unique things that are, quite frankly, way over my head to understand. And I would put in that category this proposal to install the GPS, if you will, the ionization equipment. And with your permission, let him talk to this effort and explain it in a much better way than I can do.
Thank you, Administrator Gray. Jerry, in the old days, they used to call these electrostatic precipitators. Is that still the same thing we're looking at here with the new name?
I'm not quite sure. I'm not familiar with that. But it sounds like...
Bug zapper for the air.
Yeah, it does a little more than that at this point, yeah.
Please.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. So one of our main goals, obviously, is safe and healthy buildings. So far, we've, as you've said before, we've changed our cleaning schedules, we've adjusted our HVAC, we've invested in equipment like these foggers and stuff to come and sanitize rooms. This is the next step to add another layer to this sanitization program. So what it is basically is equipment added directly to HVAC, right in the air handler, and what it does is it creates positive and negative ions that are pushed through the ductwork and right into occupied spaces. The advantage of that over, say, UV only handles it right in the air handler. This puts it out into occupied spaces, a little more direct contact. What this does is we've given you a handout basically here, and on the third page, if you look at the acronym POPE, so particle reduction, what it does is with these charges, it pulls particles together actually, and that allows us to filter it with a less MERV rating air filter. So it helps on, we don't have to push as much air because we're still using the same filters. It makes bigger particles along with COVID and everything else, it filters it out there. The O is odor neutralizing, so what it does is it knocks down VOCs, so it gets rid of the dirty sock smell or whatever in our buildings, our rooms, special areas like that. Right now, the big issue is the pathogens it kills. There's a list on the back that you can see how it affects that and what time it takes. So basically with, you can kill bacteria. Viruses you can't really kill because they're not really alive. But what this does is it breaks down that outer wall on them, and it allows it, or makes it so it can't infect as easily on humans. And then last on that is energy saved. So in normal situations where we're not running a lot of fresh air, we can actually back fresh air off because now we've treated the air better. That in turn saves energy. It cleans our cooling coils, which gives us better heat transfer, and so on. So you can see there's a lot of added benefit to this that will carry on through time. Because I'm just an old building guy, I ran this by Joe and his safety team. They vetted this out. They found that it's found in a lot of hospitals, schools, government buildings with great success there. The other thing they're concerned about is a lot of these products will create ozone, which is bad for humans, obviously. This creates no ozone whatsoever. So I got the thumbs up from that team. So basically, you can see it directly applies to our issues with COVID right now, and there's a lot of other added benefits that we'll realize throughout time.
Very good. I'm glad that Joe and his team vetted this. Do they still make the portable units of this that are not hooked in with the air systems, that are just recirculating air within there?
They do, but some of the issue with those was the ozone that they created.
Right.
And that's obviously a problem for humans, so.
So they still do make them, but that's not the recommended path. This is
Correct.
going within the system. Very good. And yes, I do know what an electrostatic precipitator is, Administrator Gray. Okay.
I thought I was the only one that precipitated it.
Is there any questions, discussion on this resolution? It has been moved and supported. Commissioner McDonald.
Yeah, I know I had, just for Commissioner's knowledge, I had conversations with the administration regarding the Ely building, and those will be installed by our people, as I understand from Administrator Gray. So just so anybody is wondering why that is the case, they will be installed by our people.
Okay. So we're not treating Ely like an orphan child?
Correct.
Good. Glad to hear. Any further discussion? Kevin had to look at me on that comment. Phil, Clerk Chapman, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Jewell?
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle? Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Commissioner Musa.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
And Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Aye. Okay, the third and final item under Finance and Budget for today, Chair Commissioner Yugovich, is authorizing an application and acceptance of funds from the State of Minnesota Department of Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation Board. I don't care if they take it off, it's still there. But anyhow, I would move the resolution. Is there support? Supported by Commissioner Yugovich. Administrator Gray.
Thank you, Chair Nelson and Commissioners. Just want to note that this is a very late-breaking positive economic development news. On Friday, we were contacted by representatives from the IRRR, plus or minus B, for an opportunity they've been working on for some time. Hang on for just a second here. Okay. With respect to this, the action before the board, again, is to authorize an application acceptance of funds for up to $350,000 from the State of Minnesota Iron Range Resource and Rehabilitation for Odd Logs Timber Development Project in Britt. If you go through the board letter that we pulled together, and I would note that Chris Ishmael is here from the IRRR to talk and provide a little more background as to the sense of urgency around this and the opportunity that they've been working on. The company is Odd Logs Timber, a local company. It's part of Nelson Wood Products. They're proposing to develop a manufacturing site. And as part of that, they need access, road access, and one that's reliable for the heavy equipment that and loads that will be part of that project. The request from the IRRR, given that these are grant funds, that we be the applicant and fiscal agent for this contract of $350,000, which represents approximately half, as we understand, approximately half of the estimated road cost for this 10-ton road. Again, Chris can talk to a little bit more. The IRRR has been working on this very diligently and brought us into the equation on Friday, and it's time sensitive, and that's why we're here today to talk about it a bit more. There are some other features as part of this. I hope that we would support the advertising the contract, and that the contract would be held by Odd Logs Timber. We're working through that. And working with the firm engaged by Odd Logs Timber LLC, Benchmark. There would be a reimbursement that we would provide as fiscal agent to Odd Logs Timber throughout that process. We understand that there are permits and processes being followed for this road to pass through federal land and connect the site to, it's proposed to Trunk Highway 53. A permit application is in process in that regard as well. So there's a lot going on, and Chris is probably the best prepared to talk to this issue a little bit more. Again, our role is to be the fiscal agent and apply for and distribute on behalf of the IRRR and Odd Logs Timber these grant funds.
Thank you, Administrator Gray. Chris, please come forward. Nothing I like better than a good surprise, so.
Chair Nelson, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to entertain this application proposal. You know, economic development is hit and miss, and sometimes things pop up quickly, and this one did. The developer is looking to try to get this production site up and running here this fall. Has worked through the easement process with the Forest Service and federal permitting, and this would be a private road off of Highway 53 that would access the parcel that the developer has bought or acquisitioned. There is no legal government entity for Britt. They're an unorganized township, so Normally, this would go to a township, this grant, or this process would go through a township or go through a city government. But in this case, you're it, St. Louis County government, since you're the legal entity for BRIT. So the opportunity here would be for you to make application to the IRRB and accept these funds. As Administrator Gray had mentioned, you would really be primarily acting as a fiscal agent. You'd be eligible for these funds as they are public tax dollars. They can't go directly to that business from the state of Minnesota. So if awarded the grant, it goes through a competitive process. If awarded the grant, this would cover nearly half or even a little bit more for the construction of that road development to that site. The business already has contracts in place for production and will be increasing some of their logging production. So this really does come at an opportune time to support our local logging industry. I can't go into super detail as we're still working with the developer on some of these things, but your application will provide a lot more detail as that's completed and more information is compiled. The goal is to get this road in place as soon as possible and get the funding in place for it as soon as possible. I'll entertain any questions at this time.
Very good. Questions, concerns for Chris Ismo from the IRRB? Chris, I have a couple. One, someday, we're actually going to be, St. Louis County is actually going to be somewhere ahead of last that the agency talks to. Okay? And I want the agency to hear that loud and clear from this commissioner. I want to be somewhere other than last. Because I think the county and our planning directors, both Barb Hayden and our new planning director, Matt Johnson, I mean, we stand ready to assist. And yet, if you're never brought into the process, how do you do that? So please bring that back to the agency. I know they're all working from home, so it's probably not the opportune time, but they all need to hear it. Secondly, if we incur any costs in this, in the administration of this, are we going to be reimbursed on this grant?
That detail can be worked out as we go through the process.
I need that to be, I need an assurance that we're not going to, these are local property tax dollars you're dispersing, okay?
Correct.
We, St. Louis County, collect local property tax dollars. I don't want to collect local property tax dollars to support your collection of local property tax dollars. If there's a cost incurred on this by our auditor's office, by our public works department, sure, I want to be assured that we're going to be reimbursed.
Sure.
Okay?
Mr.
And I
Chair.
hope I don't have to put it in the resolution to be assured of that.
No, Mr. Chair, here's what I can tell you. These grants that we award out annually are awarded out to generally cities and townships, but at times the county, depending on the project. At this time, we don't have, of the 53 cities and 134 townships in our service area, we don't have, as part of those contracts, an administrative component to it. When the grant is awarded, the grant is directly for the project. That's the way it exists right now.
So the answer is we will not be able to recoup our costs?
The answer is possibly. But again, I guess what I'm alluding to is, in my time at the agency, almost a decade, we have not used those dollars for administrative costs. The cities, the townships, the amount of administrative time is very, very minimal because you're a pass-through, more of a fiscal agent. So we have not used the funds for that cost. I mean, the other way to look at it is we're trying to fund a project that, you know, is $2.5 to $3 million as they work with their private financing and incorporate this grant money to try to make the deal fly. So shifting money away from the project for administrative, we try not to make that a precedent as we move these grants forward to communities. If Britt was an organized township, we wouldn't be funding them with administrative costs. But I'm not saying, again, that we couldn't work through that, but that'll have to be part of the discussion prior to application being made.
So, my fellow commissioners, I'm about to put a further resolve in here. I don't know if it'll receive support, but I moved the motion, so I'm going to amend the motion I moved with a resolve further that that any costs incurred in the administration of this grant shall be recouped as part of this grant process. And I would look for support to that. I'm making it as an amendment to give you an opportunity to, if you don't agree with that, but I would look for support for that. Is there support for that? Seeing none, I guess you get it for free. I want to move these projects forward, but I'm putting an additional burden on my property taxpayers, and I don't feel good about that. And especially don't feel good that departments like Public Works and our auditor's office might be. We do have an economic development planning fund, which would be the appropriate place that we would be taking it from, but not being in this process, we haven't been able to do that. So, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with a roll call by Clerk Chapman.
Commissioner Jewell?
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle? Aye. Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Musa?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
And Chair Commissioner Yurkovich.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, that's all I have under finance and budget for today.
Thank you. We move on to Environment, Natural Resources, and Chair Musa.
Thank you, Chair. Two items today. First being letter number 20-299. It's the award of a bid for the 2020 season of bud capping application to keep our forests healthy here in St. Louis County, and I would move this. Is there support? Support. Supported by McDonald. Administrator Gray, would you have any framework for this one?
Yes, thank you, Chair Musa. Commissioners, the action before the board is to authorize an award of bid for our 2020 bud capping program. Champion Forest Service is the apparent low bidder in the amount of approximately $148,000. And I know I'm going to, I don't know if Jason's still, yes he is, so I know I'm going to mess this up, but broadly, this is a very significant program for us in that it protects from foraging and primarily deer, obviously, our seedlings and things of that nature and young trees. And I think it's mostly white pine and some red pine, but I'm out of my element. I'm getting a nod of affirmation, so, but this is an annual effort that we undertake to ensure the growth and protect these young white and red pines.
Excellent. Questions, comments? Commissioner Nelson.
Mr. Chair, I look at these bids when we do them, and this is great work by our land department. But I look at them and I'm wondering where our bidders are on this. And one bid? This is the only bid we got on this? That's just, to me, I find that shocking. In the past, we've had one bid on it, but it's been a while. We've always had some competition there. And I don't understand. I don't understand why we don't have more interest in this. it is a very laborious job. But again, I don't understand why we don't have more interest in this, $150,000. So maybe as we go forward, Jason, we can learn why there is so limited interest in this and maybe try and figure out if we can combat that somehow. Thank you, Chair Commissioner Musoff. I see Jason's headed to the podium.
Thank you. And if you would, please.
Chair Musoff, Commissioner Nelson, Commissioners, just a word of comment there. Yeah, we'd like to see competition also. We had, we sent out the announcements to a number of folks. We have been dividing up so people can bid on tract in case you have a small local business that couldn't handle the whole thing. There's some room there to, not take on the whole project. Yeah, we're trying our best, I guess, to create enough opportunity out there for different sized businesses in different areas to enable them to bid. So.
Very good.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Any further comments, questions? All right, hearing none. Clerk Chapman.
Commissioner Jewell?
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle? Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Musoff?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
Chair Commissioner Yugovich?
Aye. All right, second, we have letter number 20-300, public sale of state tax forfeited properties. Looks like a great opportunity to bring properties back into the tax rolls for the county. I would move this. Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Nelson. Administrator Gray.
Thank you, Chair Musoff. Commissioners, the action before the board is to approve the attached tracts or parcels for public auction. Approve the conditions relative to that, bidder conditions and prohibited purchaser conditions, and continue our efforts to sell these unsold parcels through an over-the-counter listing at a reduced price in the future if these tracts don't sell, with the board goal of course, ensuring that these tracts are sold. So we work through that with the county auditor. So at this point in time, again, this is to approve the public or online auction for the set date, as well as to continue to reoffer individual unsold parcels at adjusted prices based on market conditions if we're not successful in selling them earlier.
Thank you, Administrator Gray. It looks like a good number of properties again. Any commissioners, comments, questions? Seeing none, Clerk Chapman.
Commissioner Jewell?
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Musoff?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
And Chair Commissioner Yugovich?
Aye. All right, excellent. That's all I have. Chair, back to you.
Thank you. We have commissioner discussion items and reports. Has anyone got anything? Yes.
I just wanted to, we got one of the best guys at the helm for our primary election tonight. Clerk Chapman, I think we grab him a cup of coffee, got a long night ahead of him. Prep him for the November election cycle on top of it. So wanted to mention him, and I want to mention to all the election judges out there during the pandemic too. It's not easy time to do that job, and I just want to give credit to those that are helping on it. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. I piggyback on that quickly, Patrick. I went and voted this morning in Chisholm, and it was really, really done well, safe, distanced, mask. You had and I'm sure they're doing it the same way all over, but you flipped a card or a piece of paper and said it needed to be cleaned after you were done voting. So it was really well run. I was there at about 7:30, and maybe it was 8 o'clock, somewhere in that area. Anyway, I was voter number 17. Kind of disappointed with turnouts, so maybe we'll get more later on during the day. But in any event, I thought it was very well run.
Can I make a comment on that? The election? I just wanted to pass on a statistic that we had sent out to each 5,587 mail-in and absentee ballots, and so far we've accepted 15,326 of them today. So 60% have sent it in.
Wow.
Our last primary that had the largest amount was issued 3,211 and accepted 2,669. So this is a significant amount of work that this department, our election department is having to support. But they have accepted that challenge readily and have been working like crazy in order to be able to make this happen. So I just want to put out a special thanks to Bill and his group for putting forth the effort that's required to bring this election to 2020.
Thank you, Chair Drugovich. Just a couple things. First off, I had a number of calls asking me to remind boaters to be cognizant of speed on the water here as we get into the dog days of summer and continue to think about safe boating. And also, 2 calls this week giving kudos to our extension group and with the gardening and asking me to bring up the internship program that is in extension. I believe we have 1 intern this year who has done a marvelous job with the 2 people that have called, and wondering if there's any way that program could be expanded as far as internship. And I told those 2 people that I would bring that to the powers to be and get back to them with some type of answer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I need to touch base on a subject that I just asked Mr. Ishmael about with the ITRIPL. This county board has a policy in place where we recoup costs when we're administering grants. I knew that the IRRB does not pay for the administration of grants. But again, when we accepted this grant, or as we go forward, we're going to be voting on that grant again here. We have a policy where we recoup it. So if we're making an exception, that's what we're doing. It is an exception to our policy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone on the phone?
Chair Jukovich, just a quick response to Commissioner McDonald. I know that the intern that we have with Extension at the moment is a young woman through the University of Minnesota. And it was quite challenging to get her to work just because of all of the problems with the virus. But she has been amazing, and a bunch of the work has been done online. And she's really gathered. I understand why people would be excited about it, because she just leaped in, and working with Troy Seltzer has been pretty remarkable. So the way we get them is through the University of Minnesota Extension, and I would guess that Troy would be the first to say he'd love to apply again. We, of course, spent some money to do it, and so there is an expense to the county. But I think she's been worth it, no doubt about it.
Thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll move to adjourn and go back into our regular meeting.
Move to adjourn the committee of the whole.
Support.
Okay, Phil, would you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jewell? Commissioner Jewell?
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle?
Can you hear? Okay.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Musa?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
And Chair Commissioner Yurkovich.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, we'll reconvene the regular meeting, and we have a few items we need to move. If anyone is interested in moving the slate, the agenda.
Chair Jukovich, can we just take 5 minutes, because there are a number of items that had dissenting votes, so there'll be several items on the regular agenda, I believe. Is that correct?
That was up, but Commissioner, Chair Jukovich, and Commissioners, there's 2 items. One would be the consent item, which was everything that was passed unanimously at the committee. And then there is one item that would be under the regular agenda. It would be item number board letter 20-303, which would be to change the location of the September 1st, 2020 board meeting from the St. Louis County boardroom to the St. Louis River Room in the Government Service Center.
You want to take 5?
I think if the clerk's ready, then we're fine, it sounds like, yeah.
I would move the consent agenda, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jewell. Discussion?
Yes.
You have discussion?
No, he's voting.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Jewell.
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald.
Aye.
Commissioner Musa.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
And Chair Commissioner Yurkovich.
Aye. Okay, I believe that's everything.
Yeah. One item.
Oh,
Item number 303.
oh, okay, okay. Moving it to the government service building. Okay. Is anyone interested in making that motion?
So moved.
Okay, by Jewell,
Support.
second by Olson. Discussion? Clerk Chapman.
Commissioner Jewell.
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald.
Aye.
Commissioner Musa.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Nay.
And Sheriff Commissioner Yurkovich.
Aye. All right, I believe that's everything we've got covered now. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by McDonald.
Support.
Second by Musov. Discussion? Roll call?
Commissioner Jewell.
Aye.
Commissioner Boyle.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald.
Aye.
Commissioner Musa.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
And Sheriff Commissioner Yurkovich.
Aye. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you, talk to you soon. This meeting's adjourned.